that graph on the left there shows that if we want to avoid going past 1.5 degrees, we need emissions to get down to zero, net zero, by somewhere between 2040 and 2055. So that means no more gasoline vehicles, no more natural gas heating homes and powering industry, no more coal-fired electricity. We have to make this transition, and if we're going to stop the warming at 1.5, we have to make it very quickly. So how do we do that? Well, we know electricity is an important part of that. We know that we need to clean up electricity. We have to phase out, shut down coal plants, natural gas plants, and move to these clean energy options, wind energy, solar energy. Then when we have this clean source of electricity, we need to electrify everything. We need our vehicles to be moving to electric. We need our home heating to move to electric. We need our industry to move to this clean electricity so that we're not releasing emissions when we do those things. We need to get more efficient at using energy, both in our homes and in industry. And we have to think about how we build our cities. The city structure determines and influences what is possible at a smaller scale. If you build cities for cars that sprawl out into the distance, you don't have neighborhoods that people can walk to a grocery store or walk to work. You don't have the population density to support transit systems that come frequently enough that you actually want to take them. So the form of the city also becomes important in making this transition, and that's why the municipal scale is so important. Now, as we make this transition, there's some good news in all of this. Some of the good news is that the costs of these technologies are falling. We have the cost of wind power has been falling for 18 years. Here's a graph of purchase power agreements, the price that utilities are buying wind energy for in the United States and also solar for in the United States. The blue-green line is wind. You can see those costs have been going down over time. We see next door in Alberta, they just had an auction for renewable energy projects for wind. The lowest bid was $35 a megawatt hour. We read our bills, it's in cents a kilowatt hour. We pay about 14 cents a kilowatt hour. This works out to 3.5 cents a kilowatt hour. That's cheap. That's actually the cost of buying the natural gas to put in the natural gas power plant. It's cheaper than the cost of having to buy and build and operate the whole thing. It's now the cost of just buying the fuel. We see solar taking an even steeper price decline, getting cheaper all the time, where it's now in some places rivaling wind. Now we can also look around the world for examples of how you move to a renewable city. So this is a community in Germany. It's the Vauban neighborhood in Freiburg, Germany. This community has focused on renewable energy and lowering their greenhouse gas emissions. They claim, the world's first community that actually is net positive for energy. They generate more energy than they use, and they do it all with renewable electricity and renewable energy. So they have solar on their homes, they have a wind farm just outside the city, they have biomass and cogeneration to heat their homes, and they designed their community differently. They designed it to prioritize cyclists, to prioritize pedestrians. They have these streets where kids playing, they call them play streets. Kids playing get priority over cars. And that's the kind of neighborhood I want my kid to grow up in, where you don't have to worry about a car hitting you or your child if you send them out to play. That's their space, not the space for cars. So we have examples we can draw from around the world, and we can do this, we can make this transition here in Regina. Now, we have circumstances that are unique to Regina, but actually some of them are great assets. We have the best solar resource in Canada, right here in southern Saskatchewan. I think Estevan is actually the #1 spot, and Regina is right close behind it. We have some of the best wind resource in Canada as well. And we have these cold winters, so that might mean that active transportation looks a bit differently than it does when you're cycling all year round, although I know that one of my old teachers from Balgony Greenhall School has been cycling all winter and even cycles out to work in Balgony, so it's not impossible, and I'm going to try to do that this year as well. But we know that we can make this happen in Regina, and I think the way to do it is to start having conversations like we'll have later after we've all finished speaking, and having conversations that extend beyond any sort of political lines. This climate change shouldn't be a partisan issue. This is the future of all of our children, grandchildren is not a partisan issue. So I really like Danella Meadows. She's a systems thinker. And she says, really, when we think about scarce resources, the scarcest resources are not oil or metal or clean air, capital, labor, technology. the scarcest resource is our willingness to listen to each other, to learn from each other, and to seek the truth rather than seek to be right. So I think that's the sort of approach we need to take. We need to be reaching across any sort of political lines to find ways to imagine a future together. I did some of this work along with Stephen Hall about a year ago for SAS Power, looking at what should solar look like in the future. But I want to commit tonight that part of my work at the university is going to be to host more of these conversations. And hopefully many of you are going to be part of those conversations, because I think if we're going to get to 100% renewable, it actually has to mean that all of us are part of that, and we all find a way to make that happen. So that's all for me, but it's going to be a good night. Thanks for having me here.
Well, thanks for making yourself hard to follow. I learned a lot. Hi everybody, if you forgot already, my name is Emily Barber. And thank you, Andrew, for the introduction, and Brett for, again, making me nervous. I will be your token youth for the evening. But all kidding aside, I'm extremely honored to be here with these incredible change makers for my community. I couldn't feel more blessed. Okay, so a little about me before we start. I am a recent graduate from the U of R, got my bachelor's degree in psychology, women's and gender studies. Yeah, thank you. Nice. My day job is as executive director for the Search Student Clinic in the North Central community. And I'm a proud cat mom, so that's just, I had to throw that in there, she's a dream. I lived in Regina for more than 15 years of my life, but was born and bred right here in southern Saskatchewan. I'm here to talk about my experiences as a youth champion with the student energy initiatives that took place last fall, where I was chosen as one of the 14 youth from across the country to come together, host a local dialogue in our area with young people, and participate in writing the Youth Voices report on Canada's energy future. Like I said, I held my dialogue here in Regina last fall. I held both an in-person dialogue, but I also held informal discussions with colleagues and friends and acquaintances, and I scoured social media to see what local folks were saying, local young folks were saying about climate justice and our energy future here in Saskatchewan. We're in an interesting position here in Saskatchewan, as Brett mentioned. So much of our economy is reliant on extraction-based and carbon-heavy industry like agriculture and mining. And we all know someone, at least one person, probably more, who rely on these industries to support themselves and their families and other people that they love. This was a primary concern for youth here in the area. If you haven't heard, we millennials are finding it difficult to find jobs in the present economy. Now, there are lots of reasons for that, and you may have mentioned one earlier. But lots of people ask, why would we want to reduce the number of jobs by biting into the extraction economy? But the answer is we don't. There are actually more jobs in renewable energy already than the oil sands in Canada. Youth in this province understand that a move to renewable energy actually means more jobs for us and our children, more opportunities, economic and financial, for ourselves and our children and our communities, and a more financially stable future for ourselves and our children and our communities. Another major discussion locally was how to incentivize local people to enter into a carbon-free or carbon-neutral plan for the future. How do we convince people in power and the majority of voters to get on board with the future we want and need for ourselves and our future generations? How do we talk someone into, for example, a renewable city strategy, who has worked on the rigs her whole life to support herself and her family? We realize that we need a plan. We need a solid plan, formulated not only by ourselves, the youth, but also experts and locals. Something with short, medium, and long-term goals to get us where we need to be. And that's just what we created from the youth side with the Youth Voices report and what we presented to Natural Resources Canada upon the closing of the 2017 Generation Energy Summit in Winnipeg. Coming together with youth representatives from across the country, was humbling and exciting for me, but it also highlighted the diversity of issues that different municipalities are facing all across the nation. But also that we're trying in our own ways, in our own communities, to look for a brighter and a more sustainable future. Here in Regina, for example, we are not concerned about having electric buses by the end of 2019. Rather, we're concerned about this 31-year plan, this strategy right now, a complete plan for becoming, or a step towards a complete plan to becoming a renewable city. These strategies have to be local. They have to be devised for our needs, and they have to be created for our future and our future generations. Two top priorities of the national report are also extremely relevant here in Saskatchewan as well as across the country. And first, Brett already mentioned, it's the depoliticization of renewable energy. The Youth Voices report, and I quote, says, "Energy policy should be driven by science and traditional ways of knowing, rather than political cycles and public appetite. Youth are concerned about the energy future, regardless of how liberal or conservative we are. Sure, there are outliers, as there are in any cohort, but the vast majority of youth, nationally and locally, are concerned with how we will proceed on the issue of energy to a more renewable end. Youth were also concerned with the impacts of climate change on vulnerable and marginalized populations, and wanted to highlight the issue of renewable energy as an issue of reconciliation, an issue of making amends for some of the harms that colonization has done to the land, but also in turn to Indigenous and Métis communities. As a youth who will inherit this city that I so adore, whose children will grow up here, I hope you will support the October 29th motion to make Regina a leader in municipal renewable strategies. I hope you will show up, call or email your city councillor, and do your part to support my future, the future of my children and others in the future generations of Regina. Thank you for your time.